Hello, everyone. I hope you guys are doing really, really wonderful today. And I'm very excited about today's topic. And as I was saying, a warm welcome to everyone who's tuning in from all over the world. I hope today is a wonderful day. It is certainly going to be. So I hope you guys are really well. And I hope you guys are really excited about today's topic. And before that, you guys know my format. I will do the usual energies read for the upcoming week. And then we'll delve right into the discourse, and then we'll do live channeling. And for those you know how to get onto the list of the live channeling. So you send in a tip and I'll put you on the list. And with that, I am going to just give it a couple of minutes until more of you guys join me. And in the interim, let me just check. All right, right place, right platform. All right, let me just check. Okay, I wanted to do a voice check as well. Awesome. All right. I hope you all are well. The energies have been so interesting. The past week has been intense, and there's a lot of recalibration. There's been intense shifts in the way you've been perceiving your journey, and that's because since May, the whole anchoring of the fifth density, everything. So we are now in a place in society, in life, in the cosmos, where we are entering a period of divine breakthrough and ascension. But again, ascension is not like a hierarchy, which is often, taught by the false light. Rather, ascension is a right of all souls. So, in other words, in earth terms, we can call it our birthright, because ascension is not about getting to some place. Ascension is about remembrance. It's about remembering who we are, and and basically snapping out of the matrix. But of course, also understanding that this is a journey chosen by us, by our soul, to partake due to many, many reasons. And of course, we have talked about it a lot of times. As twin flames, star seeds, interplanetary souls, we come to Earth for a lot of reasons. And one of the biggest reasons is, to help with everything that's going on, right? And as twin flames, some of you guys may have your DM on Earth, so you may have come to kind of help your DM wake up so that you guys can leave together. Or you've come in like it's an United Nations mission. You come in to help, to serve, to protect. So missions, in only in rare cases, souls actually come here for a holiday. Often it's the not so good energies. They come to Earth as holiday because there's a dark side. Very rarely good souls come here for a holiday due to a lot of risks that are here. So anyway, having said that, we are not going to delve too much on that. We're going to look at this week's energy. So the energies are for the upcoming week, from the 27th to the, let me see, 27 to the 3rd of August. So July is always the month, the catalyst month for a lot of spiritual changes. You would notice this every year. When July comes, you start to look within. And that's why it's during this period the veil is extremely thin as well. You tend to feel the energies more and more, the veil more and more. You start to really, really look into a lot of things with regards to your own journey. And that's why many of you guys have been writing to me that you've been feeling very sensual lately. You've been feeling your divine masculine not only during nighttime, during your dreams, but quite frequently. And I had discussed this in my daily channeling, some of the short videos that I've done as well. It is because of the energies right now: Neptune retrograde, Mercury retrograde, Uranus in Gemini, the Sun in Pisces. They're all bringing about this beautiful, beautiful rhythm in your journey. So I'm going to have a look at the comments and see. All right. Perfect. Bhavani says, "Hi, Bhavani, good to see you." So, as I was saying, the energies are extremely, extremely interesting and complex. So, let's use the word complex here. So, see it this way. All right. So, this week it's all about recalibration. As we are entering the month of August, we are also feeling deeply, deeply intertwined with the energies, and we've got the 8-8 Lionsgate portal coming up as well. So what is happening is foundational. It's not about you being stuck, but it's about you awakening, remembering, feeling the changes subtly, intensely. And this is in connection to what your divine masculine is going through as well in his journey. So the most important thing that you got to do first is you need to you need to think about you need to think about your role here on earth. All right, that's the first approach. Second approach is when the thinking gets too complex and you start overthinking, that's when it's time to actually do the reverse. Go into a state of no thinking, this state of watchfulness, this state of, trying your best to feel the macro level of things. So that's what 5D is about. It's feeling from the soul, from the higher mind, from the higher heart. Because the mind in itself, as I always say, is a recording device. The mind just stores, and that's why when you rely on the mind a lot, it's always on fight or flight mode. Because the mind stores grievances from the past, the mind stores a lot of pain, the mind stores a lot of tension. When you start operating from the soul, which is 5D and above, you start operating from a place of connectedness. You start seeing the macro picture of everything, and whatever problem that's before you, or whatever stress is before you, you start to look at it from a higher perspective. And that's what we call the higher soul, our higher soul, our higher self. So when we start relying on our higher self more than our mind, you will notice a lot of changes occurring in your life. And one of the biggest changes is you start living soulfully. And this becomes very, very important in the twin flame journey because it starts to help you to see beyond the veil. And it also helps you to integrate with earth much better, because you're no longer in tension and stress and fight or flight mode, but rather you're in a more relaxed state. You're also in alignment because you understand, hey, I am an interplanetary starseed monadic twin flame here on a journey on earth to create, to serve, to help, not out of obligation or force, but out of my freedom of choice. So once you start seeing the world this way, anything that comes in your way would start to feel more of an experience rather than a destruction to your journey. Hence, that's why all this entire week, this upcoming week, is about soulful resonance. You're going deep within, you're connecting to parts of your soul that you may have, put asleep, but now awakening. Hence, why you're feeling your divine masculine more and more, because you're feeling more and more connected. So, the overall energies is about going back to your center, to the heart chakra, and this calibration is what's setting the foundation for union. All right. So it's also about timelines being rebalanced as well. Uh, Chords being adjusted. So, what I mean by that is the presence of karmic situations. If you're entangled in a job that you find extremely, extremely damaging to you, or you are stuck in a situation, or you're still dealing with father wounds or mother wounds or inner child wounds, or you're still trying to find a balance with friendships or even relationships. This week it's about adjusting the chords that you have with other connections so that your connection with your divine counterpart, your divine masculine, is going to see a new stream of empowerment and wonderment. So this is what I call the third energy, right? The plasma or the energies between you. So as I've explained in many of my discourses, monadic twin flames are split in the hypothetical 13 dimension. It's like a cosmic egg. This is how I say the cosmic egg. And one of you divine feminine, one of you divine masculine, and in between there's this electric energy that kind of goes around. That is the third energy, and that energy is the divine intelligence, spiritual intelligence, the field that keeps you together. So when that starts to activate, and it has been activating a lot for the entire collective this season, especially in the last couple of days, with our really beautiful, beautiful combination. So the beautiful thing about Saturn retrograde, and it's going on till November, is that I love planet Saturn, and he carries what you call the fatherly energies, very, very structured, very rules based, but he works from energies, right? So Saturn energies. So he works from the space of not punishing you, but rather course correcting your journey in a way that it transforms you, not disempower you or disable you. So that's the reason why Saturn retrograde in Pisces is actually bringing all of that unnecessary karmic truths to the surface. So that's why your divine masculine is going through what you call the zombie totally collapsing into his own phase, but at the same time very connected to you in the astral phase. So that's why hidden feelings may feel like they're pressing onto his consciousness from all angles, and that's why he is interacting more with you in a semi-conscious state, more conscious state. So for different levels for each and every one of us. So what is going on as the divine feminine, our role is to embrace this space and to also clear spiritual boundaries, because the tendency is, if you dwell too much on the 3D, 1D, 2D, 3D effect of things, then you might fall into emotional traps that may feel like intuition. So rather, try to navigate this aspect of your journey from soul space. And when you're doing it from soul space, you will notice that it makes better sense. There's another powerful transition that's coming up on the 31st of July in the next couple of days. Mercury enters Virgo. So, this is actually a really, really good thing because it gives you sharpened mental clarity. And then it's also going to awaken like those haha moments, sudden realizations about the pattern you have both been looping in. So for divine masculines, this is the time to rather than being lost and being in the subconscious, it's about processing what he hasn't spoken for months, for years. So this is what's going to bring about signs like through music, writing. You might suddenly be reading a book, and the male character might connect with you, might speak to you. You might suddenly be listening to a song on the radio or on Spotify or Apple Music, and then suddenly you may feel like your DM is, because that's what's happening. And once you start recognizing this, and thanks to Mercury again, I love Mercury. That's another, because Mercury gives you that sharp, diplomatic. It kinds of helps you to make sense of things better. So it gives you reunion clarity, you know, and so if you're suddenly having flash forwards or casual conversations, that is also a deep sign of Mercury's presence in Virgo. So let's talk about Virgo a bit. Mercury and Virgo go really, really well together because Virgo is about structure. Virgo is about patience. It's about perfectionism. And Mercury kind of balances. Instead of looking at life in a perfect way, it helps you to look at life in a beautiful way. And that's what's happening to the Divine Masculine Collective. So, of course, with with the sun in Leo coming up and the pre Lionsgate build up, this is like a spiritually intense week. It's like a spiritual tuning fork, as we call it. So as divine feminines, we might feel more sensual, as I'd been talking about it. You may feel like, getting your hair done. You might be focusing on your spirituality, spiritual beauty, and also taking care of yourself internally and externally as well. So this is a week of pampering yourself in many, many ways, because this is about expression, high vibrational self reclamation as well. Most importantly, you know what this week is also about? This week is also about the third energy. So, the third energy, I think next week I'll probably do a discourse just dedicated to the third energy. The third energy is spiritual intelligence, right? So, you might be feeling telepathic waves, and astral intimacy. That explains the sensuality, and the soul merging will intensify, especially dream time. When you are sleeping, it's going to intensify, and you might find yourself waking up at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m., all of a sudden, feeling your DMs embrace. But it will also bring you to another aspect. Suddenly, you might have waves of grief, unexplained grief coming in, a kind of sensual yearning. Past incidents will come to the surface, like your DM saying things that truly hurt you, in a 3D way. All of these incidents might surface. So try to focus, but again, trying to do something is often from the mind, but embrace it. Even it might be painful, recollecting it, thinking about it again. If he had said something, or he ghosted you, or he didn't speak to you, or his silence has been so deafening, or he said things like very painful words, like, he doesn't like you, or he hates you, or he doesn't want to see you ever again. Let them just come in, and let them flow. So when you operate from the soul level, you will start to notice, hey, this is all an expression of my soul, and I'm playing my role as the divine feminine. So see it as that way, guys, because that's what's going to truly help you integrate more and more with the third energies powerfully. And when it starts anchoring your life, you're no longer a prisoner of your mind, or your feelings, or sensations, but you're rather, flowing with the universe's energy, God's energies, divine energies. So yes. So again, all praise to God, all gratitude to God for creating this divine sacred space to talk about all of this. All right. So this is what the energies are about this week, and that's why this is such a profound period to get healings done. And I have got a whole list of healings that's on sale till the 31st. So do check out featured, or go to my website and go to sale, and you'll be able to see everything that I'm offering that's on sale right now. But I introduced two very powerful healings. The third, energy activation for monadic twin flames, building the union field within. So do check that out. And the timeline anchor for monadic twin flames as well. They are both on sale, so I highly, so you can book your spot before 31st, and you can do it anytime in the next couple of weeks. So of course, the truth fire purge, and I've got healings for category 1 and category 2. I'm working on for other categories as well. The Phoenix Gate is also highly recommended. The Heart Chord Calibration, and the Divine Masculine Fragment Healing and Etheric Space Clearing as well. All right, so do check that out. But most importantly, soul realignment. If you haven't done soul realignment yet, I cannot recommend more how much it will change your life, because it will remove all of those unnecessary obstacles, not only on your earth lifetimes. If you get all three, part 1, 2 and 3, then it will remove galactic implants as well. Example, you're in a consciousness prison for a very, very long time, and then you're sent to earth on an assignment. You will still be carrying those triggers, dealing with the not so good energy. So it will completely give you a cleanse and help you to go back to the soul blueprint level. It will realign your soul to your original soul blueprint, and then you'll be able to make choices that's aligned more with your soul truth. So definitely do check out soul realignment. All right, with that, I'm going to have a look at some of the comments, if there are any, and then I'm going to delve right in. All right. Perfect. So no questions. So this week's topic, I kept thinking, I kept thinking like what would be suitable, because lately I'm doing a lot of discourses related to individuality, your role as the divine feminine, your role in the twin flame journey, how actually at a lot of times we are operating from our higher selves, how our higher selves guidance, and how we have already written our destiny by ourselves before coming to earth. So we've been exploring all of that, and I thought this week we can actually go deeper into why, as a divine feminine, you're losing your mind after he has disappeared, denied the connection, or in a very, very painful way stopped choosing you. But today's discourse is about going deeper into wisdom, how realization can actually change everything for you. And the realization that we never lose our divine masculines, but what we have lost is a version of ourselves that was built around his gaze. The version that needed to be validated to feel sacred. The version that was love bombing him or giving him over attention because of our own insecurities, because we never felt good enough. And after we meet our soul partner, our twin flame, our monadic twin flame, the other half of our soul, our divine masculine, and how we are pretty okay at the first meeting, but then we start to collapse, is because everything that has made who we are as the divine feminine starts to break loose. It is about losing our identity deeply, painfully, and that's why we're going to explore that today. So I've kind of like organized this discourse into 6 parts. I'll quickly just tell you guys what are the 6 parts. So first part, we're going to talk about how, as the divine feminine, we're actually not built for his gaze. So we're going to talk about it. And the second part is the collapse of our projected self. The third part is why monadic twin flame union requires identity death and the void between death and rebirth and coherence. The reason why I'm calling this state the coherent flame rising is because once you start, I'm not talking about mind level coherence, I'm talking about spiritual coherence here. And then finally, how he changes when you actually transform. So that's what we are going to talk about. So in today's discourse, you're going to learn why your longing is often the soul's withdrawal from illusion and what happens when you stop going around him in circles energetically, and how to hold your frequency without collapsing into grief, and why true union is a field, not a reward for waiting or a destination to be embraced. So, this is what we're going to talk about, and I hope you guys enjoy today's discourse. All right, I'm just going to see. Okay. So, I want you guys to spend a couple of minutes just looking at all of this from this perspective. How everything that has happened to you so far, even though is connected to your divine masculine, but it's not really. It's about awakening your divine feminine. So, remember, the real loss was never your divine masculine. It was the sense of self that you build around his reflection. And that's why so many triggers, so much pain, because we are so used to being a certain way. And then suddenly, the coming of home feeling, the feelings of intense love, homecoming, and the inner masculine wanting to grasp our divine masculine. But the truth of the matter is, the day our divine masculine enters into our life, it's the day we start to collapse our identity. Not in a bad way, of course. So, what I mean is, collapsing of identity is the day our divine masculine comes in, we are truly, truly reminded what love is. And we often tend to react from the notion of our own conditionings, where we simply fall into 3D ways of loving. But that's the thing. At a point, you're not even going into 3D ways of living. You, as divine feminines, we completely become berserk. Sorry about that. We completely go crazy because everything is intensified. Everything. So, especially if you had been in a lot of relationships or you've been struggling a long time trying to understand what love is, when you meet your divine masculine for the first time, everything changes. You are no longer bound by the 3D version of love. So that is why when our beloved divine masculine disappears or rejects us or denies the sacred bond, as the divine feminine, we are led into a state of deep psychic devastation, where the first stage is blaming him, hating him, scolding him, grieving about him, and then blaming yourself, scolding yourself, wishing you could change things, wishing you literally had a time machine. All of that is going to come. But what a lot of us on this monadic twin flame path don't realize is that that devastation we are going through has very little to do with losing him. Because the real loss is our identity collapsing. Because we had unconsciously built to be validated through him. So his acceptance was what we thought was helping us live. His gaze was what we thought that was, hey, giving us a sense of purpose, a sense of self. So everything was about being validated by him. And that's the problem. When we start relying too much on his validation, what happens? So this is the question I'm asking. What happens? The ego starts to collapse. That version of you that may have built romantic notions of love or fairy tale notions of love or seeing all your friends getting married kind of love or seeing all your friends getting divorced kind of love, whatever, that version of you was desperately trying to pull his attention, trying to convince him, trying to persuade him energetically in every way possible for him to choose you. And that's when he breaks you by saying, hey, I'm not interested in you. I actually don't like you. Actually, you're not the one for me. Actually, you are not even in the category of me choosing you. You are nowhere around the taste of the women I like, or you are nothing like it. But I will spend time with you subconsciously. I will dance through the home, through your home, drinking and eating and cooking, and I will spend loads of time, but I hate you. Actually, I don't even hate you. I feel indifference towards you. I'm not interested in you. And what does this do? It goes through an identity death. Because that version of us as a divine feminine, where we are desperately seeking him to choose me, to see me, to understand me, is a projection. It's not coherence. And that heartbreak that we feel is not just longing for our divine masculine. It is dismantling the part of us that was still performing love. You see, it was all about performance. That love bombing, overly. And that's why your divine, some of you have told me, your divine masculine would have said, you're fake. You're being fake. People don't behave like this in love. Because as the divine feminine, we become so excited and we start performing love overly, cooking for him, delivering his food, doing things that you would have never done for anyone else. Total loss of self-respect for yourself. Still seeking confirmation, desperately looking for signs, desperately asking the universe, praying to the universe, looking, staring at your phone, hoping he will message you, doing everything for that attention. And when that version finally breaks, which takes a while, you go through many dark nights of the soul, you go through identity crises, identity fall, identity collapse, all of that. You're no longer who you used to be. And that's when your true frequency begins to emerge. So it's not a heartbreak between you and him. It's the heartbreak of identity collapse. And this is the only doorway to monadic twin flame union, embodied monadic twin flame union. You know what is really, really beautiful that I've often noticed with my clients? It's not about what our divine masculine does to us, it's about what we are becoming based on the collapse of our identity. We often blame it on our divine masculines, and that is valid. I was there as well. Very painful, very traumatizing. But the actuality of the truth is, we are being, we are becoming, sadly, subconsciously, most of us divine feminines, we tend to form a self identity that orbits around our divine masculine's attention. See, that's when everything starts to fall. Because the first phase of the monadic twin flame journey often goes unnoticed because it feels so good. You've just encountered someone whose presence pierces through lifetimes of your soul slumber. Finally, you think, hey, someone actually sees me, but actually hates you. Of course, that's from the ego. He hates you, he breaks you, and of course it does look like it's toxic. And that's why it's so important to figure out whether you're on a twin flame journey or not, because it can be very similar to a karmic connection or a toxic connection. So please get yourself checked. However, the difference is only one thing. In a twin flame journey, you're remembering. It's about remembrance. You're evolving. You are self realizing. Whereas in a karmic connection or a toxic connection, you're actually going downhill. Your identity collapses, but you lose yourself. But in a twin flame, monadic twin flame connection, you start building yourself. There's recognition, there's activation, there's resonance. You feel seen, maybe for the first time since Earth. But that has to happen so that you are able to construct a version of yourself and when you start constructing your version of yourself, you start to truly see who you're becoming. So look at it this way, right? After the slumber phase and the recognition phase, and then after that, you subtly begin to notice what's happening in your energy field. You start constructing a version of yourself whose core purpose is to be seen again and kept. But this is the projected feminine self. So don't beat yourself too much. So it's not like you're being fake or being false in the sense of being manipulative or inauthentic, but that is the only way you can totally shatter, because you're trying to pick up bits of yourself to recreate your identity, to make him see you, to make him recognize you, to make him bring you out on dates, for him to love you, to be intimate with you, to just sometimes you don't even know why you want to be with your divine masculine, and that is the truth. So this is when, as the divine feminine, we become so false that our identity is built on an external reference point, and that's why I'm calling it his gaze. How the projected feminine self is building ourself for his gaze. And you may think it's wrong, because the thing is, you can't really Like you can't force a seed to grow into a tree in one day, right? Same thing. It's all part of the journey. So, and the thing about our divine masculine's gaze is it reactivates our monadic twin flame memory. It starts to awaken our original frequency, and it makes us feel real, needed, and sacred. So naturally, you begin to shape yourself around it. So it's not a bad thing, because his gaze activates your memory of God, of cosmic consciousness, the third energy, of your being, of your presence, of your sense of purpose. And his presence triggers our original frequency, our origin frequency. That's what I mean. But 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 his ego may reject or run from what he sees because he cannot accept what is going on. And that is the very moment he denies you. The version you built for him begins to unravel, overly doing things for him, overly doing things for him. Remember, that version of you was never real, but you were a sacred mirage. You're basically echoing that soul longing of needing to be validated back into existence. That's why when we are in that projected self era, we try to be enough for him to wake him up. We tolerate a distortion under the name of devotion. You become, so from desperation you go into the yearning phase, and then you go into the devotion phase, and then you stop living. That's the problem. You start tolerating this distortion under the name of devotion, but it's not working, because you're still operating from the mind. You're still operating from 1D, 2D, and 3D. And you start believing union will begin when he sees your value, when he recognizes you, and you start doing a lot of things to bring his attention. And that's why the soul doesn't build itself on performance. It's all about burning the performance stage and to entering a stage of coherence. And that's what today's discourse is about. So, we've been talking about being seen, attracting his attention, turning his gaze towards you. But what does it actually mean? And why is there kind of an ancient echo towards it all? Because the way our divine masculine looks at us is not ordinary. It's a feeling of home. It's a feeling of recognition that goes beyond everything. And this is true. This is wise to say that as monadic twin flames, especially in our journey, it carries the frequency signature of our original split. In the 13th dimension that I've been speaking about, in the 13th dimension, the point that created both you and your divine masculine, and being the divine feminine, that 13D, the 13D point, the 13D bifurcation point, looking back at it, at that moment when he looks at you, even a flicker of presence, it goes right down to eternity, right down to the point of split, right down to the moment of your split from the anti-material world into the material world. So that's why you would feel the sense of home, a rush of cellular memory, breathlessness, not so much. Each of our experience with our divine masculine can vary, but some of it can be similar. But a sudden collapse of all past heartbreaks in one glance. The body is telling you, the mind is telling you, the soul is telling you this is home. So this is not fantasy. I always say the first moment we meet our divine masculine, it's not fantasy. It's actually field level activation. It's like chords. That's why I always say, if you give him something, the food you give him, you cook for him, it's all encoded with codes. We are doing it on a subconscious level, but it's meant to happen that way. So that's why don't be too hard on yourself for your past behavior. Whatever happened, happened for a reason. Whatever happened had to happen for you to be in this moment. But the problem is, when it comes to being chosen, the part of us that wants to be chosen, it could be as a student in a classroom, it could be in childhood, it could be past lives. And in every timeline you're unseen, you yearn for your divine masculine's validation. So that's where, you start to collapse deeply. Which brings us to the second part, the collapse of the projected self. So every stage is as important. That's what I want you guys to remember as divine feminine. Every stage in our, again, it's not linear. You know the way I teach. I don't believe in better or worse, or I don't believe in hierarchies, or I don't believe in systems. I always say all of our journeys are extremely unique, and when we start connecting to that field of oneness, the third energy, this sacred intelligence, spiritual intelligence. My yoga teacher used to say that a lot when I was in Adelaide, very powerful yoga classes. She would always talk about spiritual intelligence, divine intelligence. She had a specific term for it, but along those lines. You know how powerful that is? And that's what, and that's how we should be. It's like the divine intelligence doesn't see whether you are spiritually advanced or you're not. Let me bring you down to a story on that. All right, so there was this all right, there was this guy, this yogi, who was meditating for, let's say, 500 years, and he's sitting by the riverbank and he's waiting to see God. Then there's a fisherman who goes up to him and asks him, I really want to see God. Can you help me? And the guy laughs at him, I don't even know why I'm using the word yogi on a person like that. Anyway, this guy who has been meditating for a long time, who claims to be very advanced, blah, 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 whatever. So the fisherman very innocently asks him, I want to see God. And he's like, a person like you can't see God. A person like you wouldn't be able to see. You're just a fisherman, you are dumb and ignorant. And the guy will be like begging him, hey, please, I want to see God. I want to see Mother Goddess. I really want to see her. Please show me the way. You are the well-read one, the person who knows a lot of things. Please, please. Finally, the guy would be like, okay, fine, keep calling out to the goddess and she'll come. So this fisherman goes to like a different level, he starts calling out to the goddess and he literally goes underwater and he starts calling out, and the goddess appears. And then he will say, that guy has been meditating for 500 years. Why don't you appear to him? And you have appeared to me. And she says one thing, you completely surrendered to me. And that's what I'm saying. There is no hierarchy, guys. So the moment the goddess appears, the fisherman is like so happy, and he's like, firstly, he's like in disbelief. But then very quickly he's like, can I bring you home? I want to introduce you to my wife. And then he invites her, and the goddess goes to his place, and the wife, without question, fully accepts the goddess, and serves her food. Then the husband will ask the wife, hey, even it took me a few moments to believe that the goddess is, well, how do you? She says that I fully trust you. And I fully trust this. And then that's when the goddess will say, the divine feminine's role is basically to surrender. And when she fully surrenders to the journey, to the divine masculine, she doesn't need to meditate for a million years, or she just have to be in the state of being. And that's what they both embodied. And this story is a reminder that there is no fixed process or fixed level, so you have to do this. And that's what Patanjali says in his Yoga Sutras as well. The biggest distractions for the seekers is not to fall under that mirage of wanting to get a lot of abilities or powers, or trying to get to this level, activating this, activating that. No, it's about surrendering, and then the activation just flows in. So you see where I'm going with this. So, when we are trying to build the identity, hoping that he might stay, this is when the projected self is born. And this happens because, his gaze, the way he looks at us, activates memory, the ego, even the spiritual ego. And that's when a lot of divine feminines, I notice, the wounded divine feminines, they think they're better than their divine masculine. They think that, I'm trying to correct him, I'm trying to help him, I'm trying to make him see this, I'm trying to make him see that. He's so dumb, he's so blah. You can jokingly, if you jokingly say it, it's fine. But you start having this spiritual superiority, spiritual ego. And then you really, really fall under the bandwagon of, how do I make sure he doesn't forget what we are to each other? What do I need to be to hold this connection? How do I keep this feeling alive? And you start performing very subtly. You start to read him too much, you read his trauma and you try to adapt to it. You figure out he's got childhood trauma, and you start to overdo things. You try to soften your authenticity to stay in his comfort zone, and he notices it that's why I always say our divine masculines are more awakened than us, awakened than us, in this aspect, because we so desperately try to fit into his comfort zone. So we start to embody a version of the feminine that he gets irritated by, he cannot tolerate, rather than the one that burns too brightly. So you become insane, desperate, crazy, and he feels it all. We are twin flames, right? Of course, our divine masculine is he would even be able to predict the thought before we think. And energies don't lie, guys, because our true essence is being spiritually loving, not spiritually terrorizing. But that's what happens to us. Our attempt for him to recognize us is so desperate, becomes so desperate. We try to do everything to get his attention. Some of us may start cooking a lot, some of us might be overdressing, some of us might be like trying to place ourselves in spots, or overly sharing on social media, trying to, because you're doing everything for him to see. you start existing for him and independently. You're totally giving your power away. And you become so desperate. You become so poorly equipped. Your divine masculine has to tap you out of that illusion. All right, I'm seeing some comments here. Good day, just popping in to say hi. Hi, Karen. I'm out with the girls playing Bingo. Well done. Diana is saying hi, V. Hi, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. Oh, perfect. All right. I know this discourse might be triggering, but many of y'all have passed this stage, and that's why it's just a reminder of what we have all gone through, right? So I was saying we start existing for our divine masculine, and we lose our independence, we lose our identity, and that's when our DM has to do what he has to do. So for some who are newly entered this journey, if you're becoming her, this will be a good time to reflect on what I'm saying in this discourse, because this version of the divine feminine is very common, especially in high level unions. She tends to be very subtle, high functioning, and spiritually disguised, and overpowering. And these are some of the signs where the wounded divine feminine wants to take the lead. And this is that uh, that inner masculine that wants to be seen as well. So the external action is like you downplay your anger to avoid pushing him away. You agree to everything he says. Even if he says something that's hurtful, you just agree. Because the inner belief is that if you're too emotional, he won't stay. So you start masking parts of you that you think that is bad. So your authenticity becomes inauthentic. But he sees through all of it. You see, that's the beautiful part. He sees through all of it. So, example, you suppress your gifts or power to stay relatable. So you act dumb, even though you might be an expert in a certain area, you try to be dumb so that he doesn't reject you. So the inner belief is that if I'm too much, I'll scare him. Another thing is you keep loving him through denial or betrayal, because your inner belief is my unconditional love will awaken him. And you wait in silence, hoping you will come back when ready. And the inner belief is that if I prove I'm safe, he will choose me. So you see where this is going, right? But remember, at the core of all this is a hidden agreement that I will dim my frequency, I'll delay my needs, I'll dismantle my truth if he would just keep looking at me. This is the trait the projected feminine self makes, and for a while it can work until it collapses. And often we cannot survive what comes next. So remember, this projected identity is not evil, it's just protective, because it's built from longing, memory, and desire. But it really makes you unstable, energetically unstable. You become so dependent on external reflection. You start trying to lose weight because you think that, oh, it's because I'm fat, he's doing this to me. And that's the irony, right? With weight, the more you try to lose weight, the more you actually gain weight. And then you start doing things you think that, oh, because you're unattractive, that's your own belief. You start doing things like cooking for him, or you trying to be a good listener, or you try to show that you but you're losing your sense of self, and that is actually very, very embarrassing. That's actually showing your divine masculine you're so desperate. because you're so dependent on external reflection and you're incapable of holding your monadic twin flame polarity truth long term, because monadic twin flame union is not built on performance, it is built on coherence. So when you are so desperate for his eyes to look at you in order to feel divine, you disintegrate the moment he doesn't look at you, which inevitably he will, and that's why the honeymoon phase doesn't last too long. But remember, he does not do this because he doesn't love you, but because your soul requires you to anchor your divinity without being seen, without his validation, without his recognition. And this is the divine sabotage built into your contract that I'm talking about. So, the version of you that needs to be chosen cannot survive what you're here to become. So, see it this way: the projected feminine self is nothing more than a shadow, an echo. She comes from a place of memory, devotion, and truth, but it's under false pretenses and kind of screwed up manipulation. But remember, that feminine is externally constructed. She's not the one who will hold the monadic union. She's not the one who calls it through longing. But then there will come a time when you need to step into coherence. So, if you feel that projected self dying, collapsing, unraveling, it's not your failure. It's your field rejecting that illusion. So, what is the next version of you? Well, firstly, she's not desperate for his eyes again, his gaze again. That's the reason why the collapse of the projected self and what you feel like you have lost is actually not death. So, after the high soul recognition and the creation of the projected, feminine self, this next phase is unavoidable. Actually, it happens and it's very, very brutal. This collapse, the collapse that I'm talking about, is when he actually pulls away. So all this projected self behavior happens in that few months that you are truly bonding, and you think that he's going to propose to you, he's going to put a ring on you, he's going to marry you or whatever. But then the collapse happens. That's when he will say something like, I don't like you, or I'm not interested in you, or ignores you, or ghosts you, or doesn't say anything. So this is the moment where he pulls away. In some cases, in category 1, the karmic detourer, he chooses another, he denies the bond, or the silent initiate goes into his freaking monkhood phase, and pretend to be a playboy on the outside, recklessly clubbing, blowing blowing away his finances in vices, or just choosing another, category 1 and category 2. And what happens? As the divine feminine, we are left in a psychic, emotional, and energetic tailspin. And you know what? It's not just the hurt that is gone. What actually breaks us, devastates us, is that version of ourselves that felt real in his presence, and it cannot exist without his gaze. So that's why this is not ordinary heartbreak. This is identity collapse on a soul level. So this is when the field reversal starts happening. So at first, you don't understand why it hurt so much. I hope I'm not boring, guys. I hope you guys find this interesting. But of course, it can be very painful and triggering actually going through that projected self. It's like you never want to be in that position ever again, right? But what actually happens is that the first stage is that it hurts so much, and you will start feeling this way. You'll be like, why is this hitting me harder than any breakup I've ever experienced? Why do I feel like I'm losing more than just him? Why does my body feel like it's rejecting reality? Like what I was talking about in my other discourses, I went into a stage where I just didn't eat because not eating was the only way to numb my freaking emotions and feelings. Right? So this is when you start doing things, over exercising. But anyway, the shock that comes with the field reversal is because the field that once stabilized you, that field that felt sacred, electric, true, has suddenly gone cold. So it's not just him that's cold, it's the frequency container that held your identity as the one he was awakening to. So when that field collapses, so does the self that lived inside it. The result: confusion, panic, numbness, emotional hyper reactivity, disembodiment, and you start to your realization collapses. So this is not you being overreactive. This is you experiencing psychic severance. So this is the point where you start thinking, what were you really holding on to? So you thought that you were holding on to him, but you were actually holding on to was that version of you that felt his divine presence. The hope that your sacredness would finally be confirmed through being chosen. The illusion that unconditional love could awaken someone still running from their mirror. So you didn't just lose a man, you lost the woman that you were becoming for him. The validation loop of your nervous system was unconsciously trained to depend on the dream of redemption. If he chooses me, that means everything that I've believed about love is real. So when he walked away, when you walked away, what happened? So when the false self is collapsing and you start walking away from that false self, what is actually happening? Your entire identity is rewired. So that's why when our divine masculine walked away or denied you or told us very, very mean things to reject us, our entire identity exploded. And because that version of us was energetically real to our nervous system, our whole physical body was collapsing. That's why it feels like that. So recently I was this scientist was talking about a heartbreak actually gives you there's a physical, actually a heartbreak is not only just heartbreak. Actually physically your heart goes through a state of shock, and that's why in some cases, in rare cases, heartbreaks can even cause a total nervous system shutdown as well. So often at this stage, it's where there's an ego death and total soul collapse. So this is the phase that brings what what you call this sacred ego death. But for monadic twin flames, remember, it's more than that. This is a field level construction of false feminine frequency, that kind that collapses your entire mindset. So this is where you may feel disconnected from your body, start doubting everything you once knew spiritually, and this stage is very, very important. You start to rage, you start to shame, you start to throw tantrums, or you just become so numb into, it's called numb attachment. The sensation that you no longer recognize your own reflection, a total identity collapse. So this is what we can call disintegration of the externally referenced self all this while. So you're totally being stripped of the parts of you that relied on your divine masculine to confirm your divinity. So your old feminine identity cannot survive this rupture because it was still rooted in being mirrored back into wholeness. So this is the spiritual paradox, you see. The same soul, your divine masculine, who activated your deepest remembrance, was coded in your contract to trigger your most brutal unraveling. And why? Because the true feminine, the true divine feminine, cannot stabilize until she has released a dependency on being chosen, her need to be understood, and her belief that being unseen equals to being unworthy. So that's why our divine masculine didn't just reject us. He rejected the version of us that was still performing, dancing around for his attention. And at the soul level, this is divine design, this is divine intelligence. So our higher self allowed the rejection so that we could fully dismantle the identity that still needed proof of worth. So that's why this is divine sabotage. And this divine sabotage is not meant to destroy us, but to liberate us from the last layer of illusion. So this is the phase that is often misread by most feminines. Actually, a lot of divine feminines don't even get to this level. You might spend an entire lifetime just being the projected version, and being in that cycle where he never chooses you. So if you don't really get to this stage, you might be stuck. Because this stage in itself is very, very complex, and it can be very, very triggering. So that's why at this point, many divine feminines misdiagnose what's happening, and they might often say, if he's my twin, why would he leave me? If he's my twin flame, if he's my divine masculine. So I get this a lot with a lot of my clients. It's like, are you sure he's my divine masculine? Are you sure? Can you do the check again? And I'm like, as a psychic, I go through the Akashic records. I also do multidimensional checks. I go to the soul blueprint. Actually, for every twin flame check I do, I actually go to that point of split, the cosmic, because I'm a clairvoyant. I actually see it. So I'll be like, how many more times do you want me to check? But it's also very valid, this stage, because these questions are valid, and another big question will be like, did I mess up my chances at union? I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have stalked him. I shouldn't have waited outside his freaking office. I shouldn't have followed him. I shouldn't have bumped into him. I shouldn't have. All of that will start coming in. Or worse, maybe I need to wait, stay pure, prove I'm still safe for him. Remember, none of these are going to work. You can wait a million years, but if you don't transcend this phase, he's not going to come back. If you go around lingering around where he works or what he's doing or blah blah blah, if you stalk him on social media, or you stalk him in real life, or if you ask around, hey, where is he going to be? Because actually what happens is that this keeps us trapped in the frequency of the projected self. So the real question isn't, how do I get him back? It's, who was I becoming in his reflection? And can I become coherent without it? That's why this phase is not about reunion, it's about dismantling the self that required is reflection to feel divine. That's why this is not ego wounding. This is actually like totally going through like a divine feminine breakdown. So that's why, see it this way, you didn't actually just lose him. You lost the self you built in hopes he would stay, the dream that his eyes could heal all your wounds. The inner child who believed that sacredness had to be earned through being chosen. But remember, this collapse is sacred, it's divinely orchestrated. And what is being taken from you is everything that was never you to begin with. And what rises next will not depend on his validation anymore. And that is the beauty of it. That is the beauty of it all. And you know what is the best part? When you start to understand what I'm saying on a soul level, when it actually makes sense. Because I have so many clients who be like, I'm doing everything I can, but it's not coming back. I'm waiting and waiting and waiting. So now let's go to the third part. And the third part is why the monadic twin flame union requires identity death. Why? So this is the part where we actually look at it from it's soul level dismantling. It's sacred engineering. So this is the point where you actually look deeper into the architecture of why this collapse happens. Because if you're a monadic twin flame, the soul contract is not exactly romantic. It's actually reconstructive. And the reconstruction cannot begin until the false feminine self has died. So, this part of the journey isn't about emotional healing or inner child work alone. Of course, these are very important, and that's why the healings that I recommend, if you're drawn to it, I always say make a choice yourself because your soul knows what it needs. Because it's all about dismantling everything within that inner self collapses. It's about dismantling that inner self that prevents you choosing coherence and your original soul frequency. And that is why you weren't abandoned. You were shattered for precision. So that's what sets us monadic twin flames apart. That's why monadic union is not like other unions. For most people, even those on spiritual paths, they don't understand how monadic twin flames work. Why? Because as monadic twin flames, we are not here to complete each other, to heal through emotional mirroring, evolve through romantic relationship. We are here to rebuild the original polarity frequency split at the 13-dimensional level and to stabilize it into the human field. So what does it actually mean? You have to truly start looking at it this way. It's not about emotional compatibility. It's about coherence. It's about feel level coherence. It's about energetic coherence, not emotional compatibility. And that's why it's like, why did he say this? Why did he reject me? Why is he not replying to my message? Why is he keeping me on Why? All the whys disappear. And it breaks everything that is distorted, the ego, the external constructs, the performance. So, when everything shatters, including dogmas and beliefs and systems and hierarchies, that's why I always say find your own journey. Don't rely on material that's already there. Connect directly to God. Get your wisdom directly from God. Don't get caught up in its spiritual loopholes and terminologies and false lights and false constructs, false systems. Don't. Because union can only activate when both you and your divine masculine are vibrated from self source divinity, which is you seeking your higher self and going to the point of split yourself. Not through hierarchy, not through system, but through your own journey, instead of relying on another person's experience. That's why I don't go too much into my experience. My role as a teacher is to inspire you to find your own journey. And that's why, as the divine feminine, coherence is so important. Only then can that field, that energetic field, can stabilize. Remember, there is no union if you still require his presence to feel whole. There's also no union if your nervous system is still looping in hope, waiting or needing proof. Another big setback is the illusion of thinking that you're ready. Please collapse that. Please break that. So as many divine feminines believe they're ready for union. They will often come to me and they say, I'm done with the healing. And I've always explained to you, healing every day, old cells die, new cells are reborn. So we can never be done with healing. We are constantly healing. That is the reality of the limited human body, the limited nervous system. That's why healing in itself needs to be expanded. Or you come and say, I'm on a mission, I'm on this, I'm on that, I've released control, I've surrendered. But in truth, most are still energetically anchored in waiting for his return, watching for his signs of progress, keeping part of his identity in stasis, just in case he comes back. And here's what your soul knows: if your coherence collapses the moment he ignores you, distances himself, or chooses another, you're still not ready. It's actually like a sign from the universe. When you're not in union, or like for the category one, if he's still with the karmic, it's often something that you need to release, the mind or the ego, or being trapped with false light or whatever, or being too caught up with spiritual knowledge, spiritual terminology, because you need to go beyond into nothingness. I've said this to a lot of my clients. That first thing I always tell you is collapse your mind. Don't get too caught up in these things. Guys, I'll just take a break for a few minutes just to rest my voice, and then I'll continue. I didn't think this discourse will take long, but I don't think we'll go much longer than 30 minutes after this. And I have, let me see, I've got Kayla, Moni, and Diana. Wait, sorry, Irene, Kayla, Moni, and Diana for my channeling today. All right. So as I was saying, how don't get lost in spiritual doctrine or methods or terminologies or processes or this or that, or these are all distracting. And sometimes you're kind of like opening up yourself to energy destabilization as well. So finding your own path is very, very necessary. Connecting to God directly is also very, very necessary. That's why you have to understand God is everything. So as I was saying, if you're still, not getting into union, there is a lot of reasons. Just a moment, guys. So as I was saying, it is like getting into a state of nothingness, totally being in this state where you're totally, you see, it's beyond the terminology surrender, it's beyond the terminology detachment, it's beyond everything. And a lot struggle to go past the pre-union stage to the union stage, because in truth most are energetically anchored in waiting for his return, watching for signs of progress. You see, that is the biggest downfall. And that's why I'm saying this stage is so important, guys, because when you are like constantly waiting for his signs of progress, you're still energetically anchored in that state, and keeping part of his identity in stasis just in case coming back, keeping the part of, sorry, your identities in like frozen mode, because in case he comes back. But here's what your soul needs to know: if your coherence collapses the moment he ignores you, distances himself, or chooses another, you are still not ready. Because being ready isn't about performance either, it's about capacity to hold truth without validation. So monadic twin flame union is not for the feminine who needs to be chosen, and that's why at this stage is where a lot of my divine feminine clients get a lot of healings done, because of completely collapsing that false feminine identity, childhood wounds, everything, all kinds of father wounds, mother wounds, everything starts to collapse. Even I have had um, divine feminines who had past lives where they were trapped in the whole knowledge matrix, you know, how they thought that with sheer knowledge you could unlock things, but that too can be a trap. In fact, every pathway you chose towards self realization, there are a lot of traps. So you need to go beyond the trap, and that's when it's finding your own identity, your own journey. That's why don't get too wrapped up on the don't get too wrapped up on the journey or the destination. You know, it's beyond that. It's actually you totally breaking down, not breaking down, sorry, I shouldn't have used that word. You're totally letting letting that part of yourself collapse for your real self, your authentic self to come in. That's why I'll repeat it again. If your coherence collapses the moment he ignores you, distances himself, or chooses another, you're still not ready. And that's why sacred coherence is very important. Because, like I'll repeat again, readiness is not about performance, it's about capacity to hold truth without validation. That's why monadic twin flame union is not for the feminine who needs to be chosen, it's for the feminine who is willing to let go of the need to be chosen in order to stabilize the third energy through remembrance. And remember, this collapse is engineered into our soul contract. So the collapse is not an accident, it's not spiritual punishment, it's the result. It's not, see, it's not the result itself. You know, it's not a mistake or misalignment. It is so the way we have designed our soul contract prior to entering earth, it's intelligently designed by our own soul to destroy everything in us that cannot hold union. Think of it as like a soul enforcement protocol. You come here with a divine instruction: I will not stabilize this field until I no longer need to be seen in order to remember who I am. So what happens? You're loved and not chosen. You're seen and then abandoned. You're open and then discarded. And this is not meant to break you, but to break the false self that would otherwise carry distortions into the field. Your soul knows if we stabilize union now, it will still carry ego. It will crave performance. It will not be clean. So instead, the soul says, I need to collapse. I need to shatter my identity. I need to burn the need. I need coherence to remain. And this is not cruelty. This is soul engineering. As much as I still feel the pain when I talk about this. So what the masculine's rejection actually serve? It's very tempting to make his rejection personal. He doesn't want me, he doesn't see the bond, he doesn't think I'm ready, he thinks I'm childish, he thinks I'm useless, he thinks I'm dumb, he thinks that I overly do things, he thinks I'm fake, he thinks I'm not good enough, he hates me, he just doesn't like me, blah blah blah. But the deeper truth is his ego is actually serving your contract. So that's why I always say the divine masculine is more awakened than us, because he's being the masculine, he's in his masculine energies, he's being in his manly energies, doing what he needs to do to help you to break out of your false self. That's why I'm saying that ego part is part of the agreement. So even in unconsciousness, he's playing the role required to activate your collapse, not because he's running, but because your field still contains something that depended on his recognition. So if he insulted you, so if he said, I don't like you, I don't want you, he blocks you, he says he never wants to talk to you again, it's to totally wake you up. So that is the reason why you cannot make the rejection personal. And you have to understand that your divine masculine is actually playing the role in unconsciousness, but part of him is actually conscious. So you have to see it this way, because your field still contains something that depended on his recognition. So that's why, you know, that that insult part, the part that he rejects you, the part that he blocks you, the part that he makes you feel abandoned, that he disowns you, it's all part of the journey. And this is for monadic twin flames, you know, getting to that 13th dimension to 15th dimension level. And that's why there is so much deeper divine so it's the third energy that actually facilitates all of this, you know. So we write our soul contract, we write exactly what's going to happen. In fact, we when we actually plan our purpose here, when we come here to earth, and when we actually plan what is going to happen between, you know, example, me and my divine masculine, everything is like written to point. So this is what I call the soul density, the soul destiny, what do you call that, the soul, I just can't think of the term, the soul. Okay, you see it this way, this is called how we have written our destiny and fate in like a piece of paper. And of course you have the free will percentage to it as well. But in monadic twin flame connections, we try not to have too much of the free will percentage, so that we don't get out of the journey. Often the free will percentage comes in at certain points only. So we try our best to stick to plan, because if this doesn't happen, if like everything that happens in your journey is as important as what happens next. And the rejection stage is the most important stage in the journey, because if it doesn't happen, your false self is always going to be there. I hope you're following me on that. That false self is going to be there, and it's going to carry on for lifetimes after lifetimes. And that's why as monadic twin flames, you have to intricately, you have already planned your journey very intricately. And the divine masculine has taken on the tougher role, because he's doing it from the place of unconsciousness. So think about it, you know, it's like born identity, right? You totally cannot remember what the hell you're doing, why you're behaving this certain way, why you're doing certain things, right? And when everything happens, you see, that's why like revisiting that separation phase can be, I do it for teaching purposes, right? So that separation phase, again, I've developed this discourse from my own experience, from the false self collapsing to actually going on to the stage of coherence. So that's why this stage is very intricate, right? Because his ego is serving that agreement that you both have. So it's not because he's running, it's not because there was something in your field that contains distortion for that separation to happen, but because your field actually contains something to activate your journey. So something that depended on his recognition. So in a way, what you're doing is you're clearing that out of your field as part of the agreement that you had written to each other. So that's why his behavior comes from the soul level, not to see you, not to validate you, and not to return. So that part of you that could not survive in truth would burn. And this is when the purification at your core level takes place. And when you stop resisting this function, you realize he didn't abandon you. He actually, for the highest love, because he loves you so much, he actually followed the code, even though, even on a subconscious level, for him to behave that way was breaking him. For him to say those things to you was breaking him. But what else can he do to wake you up, to break your veil of illusion? So that's why we tend to balance our divine counterpart in so many ways. But in reality, as the divine feminine, we are the ones who get so entrapped. That's why it's so important to remember the union field cannot stabilize in distortion. So these are the things that are totally non-negotiable in a monadic twin flame union. The third energy will not anchor unless both you and your divine masculine are in coherence. That means no savior archetypes, no overfunctioning feminine, no subtle self negation disguised as unconditional love. So if you still compromise your voice to remain lovable, hold back your power to stay safe, stay stuck in emotional cycles waiting for his return, then the field will refuse to anchor, because the field is divine intelligence, God's energy. So it knows. Remember, as twin flames, you cannot stabilize a union that depends on being seen to survive. So instead, it deconstructs everything in you that still needs confirmation. Like I said, because the field knows that it is, the field knows, because it's divine intelligence. So it cannot stabilize a union that is based on 3D level stuff. So that's why it deconstructs everything in you that still needs confirmation. And this is a big thing. In fact, I've been inspired to do a mini discourse on that. The whole thing about twin flame doubt, and why you keep feeling that way. So lately, I've been thinking a lot about that as well, because working with so many of you guys, and it's like, and some of you guys may feel that you've been in limbo too long. Like, what exactly? See, for me, the point that I actually got into union, was when I totally surrendered. And when I mean that I've surrendered, I I stopped talking about my divine masculine, and my clients at that point would know. I had Actually, I don't talk about my divine masculine much at all. But even that little bit about talking about him had gone, on a personal level, not discourse level, like, saying, hey. So at that point, when we were in separation, it was total no contact, because my divine masculine is category 2, right, the silent initiate. So I had no clue what was happening. Like, I had no clue of what was happening. I mean, I could have found out, you know through mutual context, but it wasn't going to work. And I knew that if I had known, I would be triggered too, because I needed to go past that trigger phase, right? That collapse of that false identity and everything. So I just totally anchored into third energy, doing the work that I had to do. And there was once when I was like one of my close friends, I was telling my close friend that, hey, actually, you know it just happened. So remember, in category 2, this is from my own experience, it just happens. There is no apology, there is no drama, there is no grand gesture. Category 1 might differ, because the veil burner and karmic detourer, different, because literally there is another party involved constantly. So the pain is different. The pain is really, the silent initiate, also the pain is different. But when the silent initiate gets into union with the still flame, it's totally still, it's peace, it just happens. It's like, it's like, I love to swim. And they always say, oh, one way to swim is, to so sometimes friends will say, hey, teach me swimming, blah blah blah. Anyway, when it comes to swimming, the point that I'm trying to make is, when you struggle, you're going to drown. But when you surrender, you're going to float. So that's exactly what happens in category 2 in my situation. I was totally in a state whereby I told my parents, everything that I'm doing in my life, it's God-centered. And I'm just going with the flow. And of course, initially there was pressure. They were like, you need to find someone else, you need to do this, you need to do that. But I never felt the need to do anything at all. Maybe that's what helped me get into union, maybe. But the ego collapsing, accepting that the pain is actually part of the journey, and being a psychic, being able to access my own records, the agreement that we have had. It's not even about accessing the agreement that we have had. It's about believing the agreement. Because what happens is that separation phase shatters everything. Am I right to say that? So when that happens, you are in a field where you are no longer able to, it's like you go into a state of nothingness. That's what I did. And it just happened without drama, without grand gestures, without my heart racing or feeling panic or fear or sadness or anger or desperation. Nothing. It's like one fine day, he comes back, you reconnect like old lovers, and your journey restarts again. And When real union begins, from my own experience, there is no pressure either. Pressure to do this, pressure to do that. You just flow in the most beautiful way. But one of the things that I kept getting was I kept having dreams that he was going to come back. Like dreams, like flash forwards, having dreams. That was my indicator that I was getting into union. But for different for my clients, it's different situations, different, sometimes they might just keep seeing the number 1111, but that attachment to that numbers or the dream, that disappears. It just happens. It's like your psychic senses awaken, and you kind of like, your body prepares itself for union. So your body prepares itself for union way before the mind prepares for it. So you start to feel a change in your body. You start to find yourself more attractive. You start loving yourself more. So these are some of the signs. So anyway, going back to coherence, it's that the deconstruction of everything in you that needs confirmation. So that's the point I was making. So that starts to break as well. So at that stage, I was beyond the definition or the label or the anything. It was a state of being. I came to a point where, like, it is what it is. If this is how it is how it is. Not from a state of self-pity or victimization. I just accepted this is what it is. Anyway, this is a dream too, right? But not even that, because then the ego is trying to create an excuse. You just go into a state of no thinking and being. So that brings us to part 4. Oh dear, it's taking longer than expected. The void between death and rebirth. So this is the sacred void, the soul disorientation, and the feminine field reformatting. So this is a crucial stage in your journey as well. I noticed something. I don't even have control, like like when I do my discourses, like there was one point I was doing 5-hour discourses, and then there was one point I was like, okay, I'm only going to do everything by an hour. You see, even this. Okay, so I'm just going to read some comments and then we'll go into part 4. Hi, Kayla. So MJ says, I truly believe the monadic in most situations is only there to wake up and trigger us. Then he follows his own path. But God has your back when you truly surrender. Absolutely, MJ. Thanks for that. 100% agree. I know, like, why do I feel that monadic is one soul in 2 bodies, and I feel that we are one? I mean, yeah, exactly. That's how you're supposed to feel. Kayla, it's such a great feeling when it flows. It is. It is. Yes, I'm going to do all parts today, but they are much shorter. I'll try to run that through. Hi Vaish, nice to come in and hear part of your story. So nice to catch you. Thank you. Alright, I'm going to quickly go into the space between death and rebirth. So you see, after the collapse of the projected self, the divine feminine doesn't immediately rise in power or clarity. Instead, she enters the in-between. So this is the phase most misunderstood and most spiritually critical in the monadic twin flame journey. Here, you are no longer who you are, like what I was saying, not yet stabilized in who you truly are, spiritually raw, emotionally volatile, can be physical. You can feel a bit disoriented too. So this is the starting stages. So you are in the void between timelines, and this void is not passive. It's a live reformatting zone when your nervous system, soul frequency, emotional body, and memory field are all being recalibrated. It may feel like nothing is happening, but everything is. So, what does this phase feel like? You may experience profound numbness or detachment, disconnection from intuition or inner knowing, a lack of interest in spiritual practice or mission, grief without narrative, periods of complete silence from your DM, of course, spirit team, and guides. This is what I wanted to touch on. You might suddenly not see any signs or not, hear from your guide. So that's fine. It's part of the journey as well. Or you might not telepathically connect with your DM anymore. So physical symptoms are exhaustion, dizziness, dreams that are blank, lack of appetite, or even joy. You are like in a neutral state. But you may think, I feel like I've lost myself. So this is when my clients would come in and be like, I don't feel my DM anymore. I don't know what's going on. And then they'll be like, everything I believe in feels like it's dissolving. I can't feel him anymore. Is this even real? Does this bond mean it's real? Why do I feel dead inside? So this is not regression. This is what you call vacuum purification. Your system is clearing every tether that was connected to identity through validation, projection, or performance. So what is actually going on during this phase? Your field is resetting its center of identity away from external mirrors. Your emotional body is releasing residue from the collapsed self. Your spiritual architecture is being rewired for self-sourced coherence, and your third energy channel is being reassigned back to your own custody. So, in simple terms, you are reclaiming the part of you that you gave to him consciously or unconsciously in order to be chosen. So, this phase is not about healing wounds, it's about rebuilding your internal authority. And authority doesn't feel like confidence at first, it feels like emptiness. Because until the coherent self stabilizes, your inner world will go dark. And this is intentional. Remember, as divine feminines, you must walk through the void, not because you are broken, but because the bridge between what was and what will be is as sacred as it can be. So this is the mistake many divine feminines make here. So from a lot of my clients as well. So most divine feminines try to escape the void too early, and often this is what they do. They'll be like, maybe if I go back into devotion he will return. But remember, devotion in itself is a trap. Maybe if I focus on my mission I'll feel real again. That too can be a trap. Maybe if I surrender harder this will end. But surrendering cannot be harder. Surrender is surrender. But remember, the void is not punishment, and it cannot be fast forwarded either. It has to happen in divine timing. Because what you are actually experiencing is frequency collapse of all false scaffolding. And if you rush to rebuild before your foundation is purified, you will end up recreating the same identity, just with new spiritual clothing. So remember, this is a sacred pause. It's not a gap between stories, it is the deletion of the entire code book that made the old story possible. Your job is not to figure it out, your job is to let your field empty itself of all the selves who needed to be chosen. So really, it's about you totally letting go of that need, people pleaser, I need to be chosen. And you will notice this in all aspects of your life. And I've been there before. I was the people pleaser. I was the person who needed to overly do things to be seen. But why? Just be you. Again, easier said than done. So, I want to talk a little bit about the emotional and energetic markers of the void space. So the marker is you feel emotionally flat or blank. The meaning is your emotional body is unplugging from distorted narrative cords. The marker being you don't feel like doing spiritual work. Your system is actually being rewired, not in action mode but in integration. You miss him and don't miss him at the same time. This means your field is rebalancing soul memory versus egoic longing. So you question the bond. What is actually happening is that your nervous system is detoxing from the reward feedback loop of being the one. You want to rest more than you want to heal. So this is the stage where you're entering self-source stability for the first time. If this is you, you're not lost. You are in sacred reconstruction. So, what begins to form in silence? Though it will feel slow and non-linear, certain truths begin to emerge in this phase. You no longer panic at his silence because his system is no longer dependent on his response to stay stable. You stop fantasizing about return, not from bitterness, but from deep clarity that says he's not my heir. You begin to sense a new center. It is subtle, quiet, and not performance related anymore. But it's there, a frequency that says, I don't need to be chosen, I already am. So this is the stillness, not surrender. This is sovereign silence, the kind that precedes you into becoming the embodied, monadic, divine feminine. So that's why, remember, this void isn't about punishment. It's where you're being purified. It's a place where memory detaches from projection, identity detaches from reflection, and love detaches from dependency. It is the return to source alignment, stripped of the story, where you simply become. So the fifth part is when the coherent monadic divine feminine starts to rise. So this is where the return of self-sourced divinity comes after total identity collapse. So once the void has done its work, once your field has burned all the remnants of the projected self, something subtle, powerful, and unfamiliar begins to emerge. Not a better version of your old self, not a healed version of the women he left. What rises is something entirely new, and I would call this divine feminine a coherent flame. This is the divine feminine who no longer requires reflection to remember who she is. She's not born from longing. She's born in silence. She's not chasing union. She is union. Not in outcome, but in field frequency. So this is not empowerment in the egoic sense. This is remembering your origins, fully stabilized. So remember, coherence, if you really look at the word coherence, I can even bring out a dictionary definition for you. Oops. Let me get a dictionary definition on what coherence means. Then we can go from there. So coherence means all of its parts fit together. So when something is coherent, everything fits together, but not in perfection, not in logic or consistency. So here, I'm not bringing out the literal definition of coherence. I'm bringing out, like it says, the quality of forming a unified whole. That's what happens. That is the definition, as you can see. So it's not being emotionally invulnerable or spiritually superior either. Coherence is when your nervous system, soul, memory, emotional body, mental field are all aligned with truth. Not narrative, not projection, not identity or performance. It is the moment when your internal reference point has returned to source within, not externally. In this state, you no longer need him to choose. You no longer collapse when he pulls away. You no longer beg the universe for reunion. You are still, not because you gave up, but because you came back into frequency alignment with your soul. So what happens when the coherent self stabilizes? The emergent doesn't come with fireworks, like I was sharing my experience, right? It comes quietly, almost unmistakably. You stop needing answers about the bond. You don't really search or seek anymore. You stop fearing whether he will return or not. You accept everything as God's will. You no longer shrink in the face of the unknown. You own it, you accept it, and you really really thrive in the mystery of the cosmos. Instead, you begin to feel real without needing to be seen, whole even in the absence of closure, sacred without the need of spiritual theatrics. So it doesn't mean you never feel sadness. It means that sadness no longer defines your orientation. You have stopped bleeding for love. And that is when the magic happens. So, I'm going to look at some of the markers of feminine coherence. So you stop looking for signs, and actually that means your soul field is no longer asking for reassurance. So remember, the universe is very, very good to us. God is very, very good to us. When we're looking for signs, God gives us signs. But when our soul doesn't lead it anymore, your soul field is no longer asking. It means that you are no longer, and that shows coherence. You stop checking his energy. You no longer need to monitor him to feel safe. You feel love without needing contact. Your memory of the union is decoupled from external behavior. You no longer identify with the journey because you're no longer trapped in the story of the bond, and you don't need closure. You have retrieved your energy from the timeline of waiting. And this comes a lot from past lives as well. So these aren't mindset shifts. These are like field level cosmic shifts. It signals that as the divine feminine, you're now self-stabilized. So this is my favorite part, the return of the third energy, but not the way you actually expected. So ironically, when you stop trying to anchor union, that's when the third energy begins to rise. So I'm not talking about surrender, and I'm talking about totally, there's no word for it, like totally becoming, embodying. And why? Because you're no longer pulling at the field, you're no longer introducing distortion to it. The third energy between you and your divine masculine begins to self generate from coherence, returns to its original polarity alignment, becomes a field of remembrance, not reaction. So this doesn't guarantee his physical return, but it activates the reweaving of the template and prepares your field for the next stage of soul convergence, because now you're no longer dependent on him to hold the charge. So this is when you become embodied, you become whole. So you're not the chaser, you've surrendered. You're not the suppressed feminine who calls devotions patience. You're not surrendered but hopeful that, divine timing. You're not the chaser. You become this undistorted axis of remembrance. You do not flinch when he disappears. You do not inflate when he returns. You do not collapse in the silence, not perform in the contact. You simply become the embodiment of the monadic divine feminine. Still, steady, unattached to outcome. Not because you are numb, because you are coherent. And the man who left you was the mirror. And the flame you became without him is the truth. So this is what you're always meant to become, and this is what takes many, many lifetimes. But think about it this way, this could be the lifetime, because the many, many lifetimes have passed. So like I said, guys, 2025 to 2050 opens the sacred period of twin flame unions, split soul, monadic. It's all happening, and it already started happening in 2020 itself, and now more and more and more. Remember, the coherent flame does not need proof, does not wait for permission, does not shape herself for the divine masculine. In fact, I was feeling very strong when my DM returned, not because of him, but because of who I became. So this is the part you're probably all waiting for. The final part. What he feels when you become coherent. So here we are going to talk about field reversal, energetic disturbance, and the masculine's awakening to you. So by now you would have walked through every phase of the feminine initiation. You build the projected self, you experience the collapse, you surrendered into the void, you emerged coherent, but something unexpected happens once you reach coherence. He begins to feel you differently. And this is something that my DM has said, at that point of him returning. The way he felt about me, my energies were totally different. There was no, it was different. It was like the original energy, like that point of split, that energy, because you're no longer sending energy. He begins to feel you, not because you're sending energy, not because he misses you in the human sense, but because your field is no longer distorted, and that silence, that unavailability, the sovereign presence, it disturbs him in ways he cannot explain. You have like exited that karmic loop, and now the only way for him to find you is to match you. So the collapse of, oh wow, 11 12, 11 12, guys, make a wish. So the collapse of energetic entitlement. So when the divine masculine was still in distortion, he may not have consciously recognized your love, but he felt its presence. He felt the pull of your attention, the energetic offer of your unconditional forgiveness, the frequency of I'll hold you until you're ready. Even if you weren't texting or reaching out, your field was available, and he built a kind of unspoken, energetic entitlement on that availability. He may have thought, she's always there. She still loves me even if I ignore her. Even if I'm mean to her, she's still coming back. Like she's no backbone, she's so weak. And he's like, he may have thought, I can come back when I'm ready. But when you become coherent, something shifts. The field disappears, not because you closed it, but because you've stopped broadcasting from the projected self. And now there is silence. And it's not spiritual punishment, but energetic withdrawal of that unconscious agreement. So what does he feel when your field, where your feminine field goes still? At first he may feel relief on the surface, because he'll be like, finally she's not inside my head. Then confusion, why don't I feel her anymore? And then discomfort, as if something is missing but he can't name it. And then disturbance, a psychic itch that something is wrong. And this is not about logic, it's about frequency detachment. He's no longer fed by your emotional projection, your waiting, or your energetic compensation for his avoidance. And so he feels adrift. It's not that you're punishing him, it's that your field is now in full sovereignty, full freedom, and you're no longer going around him like merry-go-round. Yeah, the song. Anyway, this is what happens when I speak too long. So in other words, you are no longer orbiting around him, and this breaks his internal compass, because whether he admitted it or not, he was navigating his journey by your coherence long before he even found your own. So now that the signal is gone, all that remains is that void in him. So what is his reaction to your coherence? So each divine masculine reacts differently, so that's why I don't want to like just put in my experience. And I do not like let me put it this way, everybody's journey is very unique, and that's why I always guide you guys from not following somebody else's path. So each divine masculine reacts differently when confronted with the absence of your energetic compliance. So here are the core reactions. He begins having dreams, feeling anxiety, or sensing your presence as void rather than warmth. So this is the disturbance that I was talking about. So he may reach out superficially, not knowing why. He may feel disoriented or not himself. So that is stage one. Then stage two is resistance. He may suddenly double down on karmic parts. So this is when the karmics will be like completely out, or external distractions. So this is when he avoids your presence even energetically. He projects his discomfort onto you or the bond. And this is when you start feeling him more. But because you're in your sacred authenticity, you just flow. And then number three, reverence. This is the early awakening phase. This is the cocoon phase that I was talking about. He becomes aware that something sacred is missing. He doesn't yet know how to approach it, but he feels the magnitude. He respects this field even though he doesn't understand it, and these responses are all functional because these are signs that you have destabilized this egoic template. He cannot enter your field from distortion anymore. He must evolve or remain separate, and now for the first time he knows that. So why is it that his soul all the while didn't respond to anything, suddenly respond to your stillness and not your effort? Because when you become emotionally available, patient, holding, offering, he was comfortable, not awakened, just comfortable. But when you became coherent, your frequency began transmitting something entirely different. It said, I love you, but I'm not, you know, going around you. I'm no longer orbiting you, going around you. It says, I remember us, but I will not distort myself to carry you. It also helps you to own your divine femininity. You're like, I am the divine feminine, and you must meet me here or not at all. So this is not punishment. This is truth fielding. So the soul of the divine masculine, beyond the personality, beyond the fear, knows the signal. It is the original tone of the union, and only when you become still does he hear it without interference. This is how his soul begins to respond, by surfacing his own wounds, by experiencing the tension between ego and truth, by remembering the real you, not the self you performed for him. This is the moment his awakening truly begins. And this is the exact moment you no longer need to wait, because you're no longer empty. And this is the paradox. Once you become coherent, you no longer wait for the union, because you have become the stable polarity. You're no longer waiting, you're holding. You're no longer needing, because you're transmitting. And you're no longer loving towards him, because you're loving through truth. And the field will do what it must. If he's meant to return, the field will pull him back, not through longing, but through alignment. If he chooses not to align, the field will hold you in peace, not pain. You are no longer incomplete. You are no longer reactive. You are not in pause. You are in power. And you will feel that, and in ways he cannot name. And for the first time, he's not being asked to meet the woman who is waiting and waiting and waiting. He's being invited into the field of the divine feminine that waited for no one, but we become that radiance. So that's why, guys, you don't need for him to come back. You need to come back to yourself. Now that you understand what I'm talking about, the coherence, what coherence does to us is that we become untouchable in our power. You become unforgettable in your frequency. You are unavailable for distortion anymore, and completely open to truth. And what he does from here is between him and his own soul, because you are no longer the mirror, you are the axis, and from this axis, union is no longer a dream, it is the field, and you're already inside it. And that's why, guys, I'm saying just go with the flow. And guys, if you need support integrating this collapse into coherence, or you're ready to step into your third energy field fully, I've introduced many healings and activations and sessions, guidance sessions for exactly this phase. So do check out my website for that. Remember, your divine masculine never defined your light. He only revealed the parts that still needed to remember it. So, with that, I hope you have enjoyed this discourse. I hope it wasn't too rushed. I don't think so. But I have completed all the 6 parts. And I'm going to look at some comments, and then I'm going to do the channelings, and then I'll be done. Okay, let me see. Guys, it's quite I'm opening the floor to questions. All right, Bhavani says this discourse has been so helpful, not just for the twin flame journey, but also for life in general. Surrender. Oh, sacred reconstruction. I love that. Thanks, Bhavani. Kayla, I'm so glad, Bhavani, this discourse was helpful to you. Kayla says, I agree. I didn't catch the beginning, but this past hour I've listened is very good. Oh, thank you. Becca says, I feel this deeply, no longer orbiting. I know what I want and deserve, and I know exactly where I desire to be met. Kayla says, this was so good. Realizing it's not punishment after all was an eye opener. Exactly. And guys, I've tried my best with this discourse. Again, everybody's journey is very, very unique. And please don't ever compare yourselves. Another thing that I've noticed with a lot of divine feminines in pre-union stage is being trapped in dogmas and definitions and stages and processes, or getting lost into trying to you know, unmask ancient scrolls, for example, or being too carried away by the process. Remember, spirituality has no hierarchy. It is you being you, the sense of being you and recognizing you, because there is no sacred ladder for you to climb, or something that's up or something that's below. It's becoming who you are, exactly where you are. And when these distortions go away, the field is cleared for anything to happen. And at that moment, you would no longer long for union or anything anymore. And that's exactly when it returns. At least I can only speak from my own experience and from my clients who have united, you know. But one thing I can say, touch wood again, I have been in stable union so far, and I would say that, you know, it's stable. It's normal, it's stable, and you know, you start to enjoy normal 3D life, and the state of being, and it just flows. All right, then, I hope you have enjoyed this discourse. Any more questions? I'm going to delve right into channeling. Okay. So Erin is saying, hello V, I'm trying to work on myself, doing a group called She Who Rises, basically working on my rage with Lilith and Mary Magdalene. Will this help me to find myself? I'm just curious why things shifted with me, and why I never felt abandoned by her in the past, and now all of a sudden I do. Is this from switching timelines or past life traumas, or is she my dark twin? Thank you for the guidance. All right, this is actually a breakthrough phrase, Arid. So working with your rage is really, really good. So keep doing it. The work you're doing with Mary Magdalene, it's going to be wonderful. So she's not your dark twin. She is your catalyst. I'm sorry, not catalyst. I meant catalyst as a general word. She is being a catalyst for your change right now, but she is your twin flame. I can confirm that. I've confirming it with the Agashik records as well. So, Irene, look at it this way. Right now, you know, the self that you created for her is collapsing now. You are now moving into the state of authenticity. And that's why everything around you is collapsing. So basically, as this discourse, you know, you are collapsing to go into coherence. That's what's going on right now. And your divine feminine unconsciously, your twin flame unconsciously is she is bringing that out for you. She's actually awakening it for you on a subconscious level. So everything that you're doing to each other is awakening each other in the most sacred, sensual way possible. But what is happening right now is that everything is being released. You are getting into a state of total field clearance, Irene. So that's what's going on. And that's why all the rage. So this is part of the cleansing protocol as well, for you to like cleanse all that is not serving you anymore. So that's why deeply I just feel you just have to not even surrender, just be in the state of embodiment and being, and see this as a work of your higher self. So you're doing it so that you can activate certain codes that are hidden in soul memory and beyond. So keep doing the work. Working on your rage is very essential at this time, because it's opening up new pathways for divine breakthroughs. So the messages that I'm getting from your twin flame is that she wants you to know that it's very difficult for her as it's difficult for you, but love is all there is. And she says in all this pain, she just wants to say you that she loves you across time, space, beyond, and everything. And she wants you to just go to the point of split and to remember who she is to you and for you to her. And she's desperately begging you to just flow. She says that the triggering is part of the awakening, and she doesn't want to do what she's doing, but she has to do what she has to do for herself and you. So with that, Arid, I hope you have enjoyed this channeling. Next up, I've got Moni, and her question is here. So Moni's question is, did me and Eric shift out of separation now? I'm feeling him stronger than ever. I'm seeing different signs now, like more telepathy, his name everywhere, hearts, stars, different number synchronicities, ear ringing every day. I think he may be wanting to show up and be present for me, is what I'm sensing. What do you see as far as final reunion? We still have our first post separation date tomorrow on Sunday. Well, a lot of surprises are waiting for you, Moni. You know, this is just the beginning of the field stabilization. This is just the beginning of sacred reunion between the both of you, because now it's like you have fully flowed into your authenticity. He's fully come out of his wounded masculine. So the time for merging is now. So all the signs, the telepathy, everything is happening because the entire universe is celebrating this union, this pre-union stage. So tomorrow is going to be a total game changer for the both of you. You know, so just be in your presence, be in your embodiment, and you will notice a sacred flow of energies just coming in and flowing through. So you will be noticing that separation never existed, and that awareness that separation never existed is what is happening right now. And the beauty of it all is that, to answer your question, did you and Eric shift out of separation? Absolutely. You are anchoring that sacred pathway of union right now, you know, without any kind of attachment, expectation. So it's just going to flow in. His messages for you is that he feels at peace. He feels smooth, and he's so eager to see what comes. And right now you're at that point where everything is divine orchestration, everything is your higher self orchestration, and everything that is meant to happen is happening right now in the most beautiful, divine, soul changing, soul shifting way. And with that, Moni, I hope you have enjoyed this channeling, and all the best for tomorrow. Blessings to you. All right, Diana. Oh, Diana is saying, it's my favorite day of the week. It's been a rough week losing a matriarch of our family. My deepest condolences to you, Diana. and sending you so much love. And as you are saying, but as a family, we've come together stronger than ever. My sisters and I decided to go out last night for the first time over 8 months. And who should I bump into? The NPC you used to live with, who takes video of me and ask my DM who I am. He knows who I am, but trying to stir trouble up. Thank you so much for my healing this week. Also, that's been taken me to a whole different space, despite the deep, saddening loss and my DM being mute, and finally feeling free of breast cancer. There is finally a lightness about me, and I can feel my DM closer to me than ever before. And bumming into the NPC was confirmation for me. Thank you, Vaish, for always being there and leaving such a beautiful, warm, loving, and very, very lasting imprint on me. Much love, my dear friend. Oh, love to you, my dearest friend. To you are beautiful. And that NPC is coming in because you are like, he's coming. But you know what? He has lost power totally. And that's why, he's coming up above all these distortions that is totally irrelevant. But you know what, this time it's going to work in your favor. So the trouble he start trying to stir up is actually going to unmute your DM, and he's going to literally, I feel like this week, the week that's coming, there's going to be a lot of conversations, very fun, because you're really entering this coherent divine feminine phase right now, where you have like totally you're just being in a state of being an embodiment, and your DM is feeling that, W is feeling that very strongly. And the healing that we did, total game changer, like your field is clear, and you're just in that stage of divine embodiment. So the messages I'm getting from your DM is that he loves it. He loves this version of you, and he says that you are going to love this version of him that is recalibrating, coming in, but will not disappoint you this time round, because it's all about expanding the family, a house full with children, and it's going to be harmony, and that's exactly, this is the lifetime that you have both been waiting for so many lifetimes, and that's exactly what's happening. And it's so beautiful, it's so powerful, and everything is just flowing in the most beautiful and powerful way. So I can just feel the energies coming in. And Diana, I just want to say, surprises are coming in. And with that, I hope you have enjoyed this channeling. And Kayla, finally. All right. Kayla is asking, what should I focus on currently in my journey? What does my uh, divine masculine need from me? So, Kayla, right now, just focus on being the most powerful version of yourself, and then just keep working on the coherence, and it's just going to flow through. Actually, you just have to, I don't even want to use the word surrender, because surrender is so overrated. Detachment also overrated. Just flow. I will just say flow. Keep doing what you're doing, keep shining in what you're doing. Be the love to the world that you want to see. Spend a lot of quality time with your friends, your family. Keep shining your magic light, keep being, keep shining, keep embodying. And your divine masculine needs nothing from you. Your presence in itself is enough for him. So just keep being, keep flowing, and keep anchoring. The messages I'm getting from your divine masculine is that he wants you to know that you are everything and always will be everything to him. And he says that the veil is breaking. He's remembering. He says that finally he's understanding what you have been trying to tell him all along. And energetically, Kayla, the veil is very thin, and it's really beautiful. Expect the unexpected. A lot of surprises are going to come in. And you know what? There's going to be so much beauty in your field. In your combined energetic field is also looking very radiant. Blue, pink, yellow, red. Past life memories are just for you to grasp and for you to, so So that's what's going on. Like, there is so much that is happening, a lot of healing is taking place right now, a lot of soul realization, self realization. Really, it's all aligning and coming together. Just surrender to the process. Getting healings done would also be powerful at this stage. Yeah, just keep being you and shine in your essence, and everything will go with the flow. All right, Kayla, with that, I hope you have enjoyed this channeling, and I'll look at some questions. All right. Oh, yes, I hope I've answered your question fully, Kayla. And Moni says, when the DF surrenders, detaches and steps into a highest timeline, it creates the energetic space for the masculine to face his truth without interference. Kayla, the healings I would actually recommend would be, I would actually recommend the timeline anchor for monadic twin flames. It's on my website. And also the third energy activation for monadic twin flames. The first two I've listed in on this post. They are very powerful, and they'll be very helpful to bring out the to truly help at this point in your journey. So these are the two healings I would recommend. They are on the featured on my website, and you can find them on the site as well. All right, guys. With that, any more questions? Do you guys have any more questions? If not, I know I've done life after a really long life, after a long time. God willing. So I thank God again for this amazing discourse. All praise to God always. And truly, my higher self and my divine masculine, of course, for letting me share a little bit of what we went through at that point, always and always. And I hope the bits and pieces that I share about my journey inspires you guys. But more than that, I hope these discussions, these discourses, they help. And of course, if you have, I recently put out I opened out a post on my YouTube asking what topics do you want me to do, and a lot of you guys have been sending me a lot of amazing suggestions. So please do. And also, right now, the healings, I'll recommend each and every one of them. The third energy activation, the timeline anchor for monadic twin flames, the Phoenix Gate soul purge, the chakra mirror activation for divine masculine feminine balance, the heart chord recalibration and soul memory awakening, the soul bond repair, the twin flame DNA and light body activation, and the divine masculine fragment healing and etheric space clearing. They are all on sale till the 31st of July, so do not miss out on the sale. Yes, and you can book through my website, and then we can figure out a time and date. And yes, I highly recommend all of this. And with that, I hope to see you all again next week with God guided, higher self. I thank my higher self for, lately, I just have been feeling so inspired. And it's always like this time of the year when the veil is really thin. Just being guided, I just feel guided to do what I'm doing. So I really, really hope, you guys, gain something out of these videos, these discourses. And with that, guys, do not get worried or sidetracked, or just focus on your being, your embodiment, and everything will flow. Don't get too carried away. Remember, distractions can be very disempowering, and at the end of the day, you don't want to get trapped in that. So that's what really matters. And with that, I will see you all again next week, and I'm posting a lot of videos on my YouTube channel, so do check that out. I've got a few topics planned. I actually wanted to do some today, but I don't think I might, because I didn't think this life would go on this long. With that, I'm going to have one last look if there are any questions, or we can call it a day. And good night to a lot of you. All right. Oops. Kayla says this has been helpful. I can't wait to catch the part I missed on the replay. Oh, um, all right, Kayla. I hope you enjoyed the first part. It's really been building up rhythm and momentum. All right, with that, thank you all for being here. And with that, all the best in your journey. And I just want to say good luck, all the best. May God bless you all always. And please, please have a direct connection with God always. For me, when I do these discourses, it's direct from the cosmos. It's like there are no filters, there are no middle people. I always get my information directly. And I have to say this, astrologically, even the astrologer long ago said that my 12th house has something direct, got direct access. And I want you guys to also remember, all of us have direct access, and to remember, direct cosmic consciousness. Cosmic consciousness, please, don't get diverted, distracted, or get lost in doctrines and dogmas and systems and this and that. Find your own path, regain your sovereignty, never give your power away. Remember, my transmissions, my discourses are here to encourage you to find your own inner power, and to find your own inner power. And with God's blessings, may all of you be in union. Take care and love you all, and bye bye.